let me thank Senator Cardin for his extraordinary leadership in this regard. I served with Ben Cardin on several committees, and I must say this is just one example of his extraordinary leadership, and I appreciate it very much, and I, as well as Senator Reid and all of my colleagues. You know, I think the most significant role of the government is the safety and security of its citizens. And that also means safety from lead contamination, not just safety from Al-Qaeda and ISIL, which of course is a challenge, but domestically safety from lead poisoning. The dangers of lead exposure are not confined to just Flint. In New Jersey, we have school children drinking from lead-tainted water. We have kids breathing in lead-contaminated dust, and we have an aging water infrastructure, some pipes predating the Civil War. Local leaders across the country are in search of a solution, and the bills that we are unveiling today tackles our nation's lead crisis head-on. It includes two provisions that I have authored: the Sustainable Water Infrastructure Investment Act that I worked on with Congressman Bill Pascrell would jumpstart greater investment in our crumbling water infrastructure simply by ending an antiquated tax regulation. By lifting the cap on private activity bonds for large-scale water and wastewater projects, it will allow communities to leverage a modest federal investment into billions of dollars of lower-cost private capital to finance these badly needed upgrades, and it would create jobs and stimulate the economy. Congress has already exempted airports, intercity high-speed rail, solid waste disposal sites from these caps. Why not exempt our water infrastructure? By updating our water infrastructure, that would be a tremendous help to this overall issue, but it also can't be our only priority. Lead poisoning most often occurs and is most prevalent in aging housing stock. And we know that even limited lead exposure can fundamentally alter the course of a child's life. Just last year alone, 3,000 New Jersey children under the age of 6 had elevated levels of lead in blood from exposure to lead paint in their homes. We owe it to them and to their families that live in federally assisted housing to have standards aligned with the latest prevailing science. That's why I've worked with Senator Durbin, who has been a champion on this in Chicago, and on a separate provision of this bill to address the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's outdated and ineffective lead standards. Under current HUD regulations, intervention is not required until the amount of lead in a child's blood is 4 times higher than the Center for Disease Control standards. That's unacceptable, short-sighted, and dangerous. Our provision would bring HUD's threshold for action in line with the CDC guidelines. HUD would also be required to inspect all homes before new families move in and to provide relocation options. And the EPA and HUD would be required to update their standards for lead in soil to make sure we can prevent lead issues before a child is exposed. These are practical investments we can make today to avoid significant and unnecessary costs tomorrow, both to our children, to our families, and to the government. And finally, we have a moral obligation to do better than century-old pipes and decades-old standards. We cannot sit back and watch our children being poisoned. The lesson of Flint is clear. Its lesson of Newark is clear. Let's learn from it and act upon it. Let's protect our drinking water, lift up our standards, put people to work, repair aging water systems, keep lead out of our homes, out of our communities, and protect our children for our future.